Okay. Okay. So I think we're seeing how far we can generate some discussion going. I don't know whether this is what Claire had in mind, but I wonder if anybody would like to speak or respond to a comment that they've made here, or to add any, yeah, a respond to any of the comments which are there. Um, Sharon, I think your presentation seems to have generated the most discussion. Are there any comments that you'd want to respond to or underline?
Um, I think it's fabulous just to see so many people have so many thoughts on it, because for a while it felt like I was the only person who was interested in doing it as scholarship. It was something we all talked about a lot, but I think for a while we felt that it was outside of our control. I did raise a number of questions. I think that's probably why I didn't really have a lot of answers. I had a lot of questions, so it's probably why there's been so much discussion. And I think that's a useful starting point for us all to acknowledge um, that there are a lot of areas we could go to in this. There's a lot of work we could do, and that it would be great to see people kind of doing it. My one of my as I was reflecting on preparing the presentation, one of the things that came across most strongly for me, and that I would like to stress again, is just that that idea that some students like it and some students don't, and that's our very first starting point, and I think people have really kind of taken that on board, and that social media is not the same thing. There's many different platforms in social media. We can engage in different ways. So I don't know if anybody wants to ask me anything in particular.
Okay, I'm noticing that there is some interesting discussion here that may be the issue, and I think this is John Rainford and Margaret. Is it Margaret Taylor? I can only see half your name. That perhaps the issue is tutor-free spaces, and maybe that's what makes the difference between why a forum uh, is less popular than some social media spaces for some students in some instances. Um, Given that this has been sort of quite, seems to be the paper that certainly in Group B has generated the most response, I'm wondering whether people have got any comments about how it might reshape or help them to rethink aspects of their practices.
Zuma, Jackie Musgrave has got her hand up.
Oh, brilliant. A hand. That's right. That's good.
Thank you, Shiny.
You're
Um,
welcome.
Hi. Sorry, I didn't
Thanks,
see it.
Zuma. And Sharon, I was really interested in what you said, that if a tutor forum is used well, or a forum is used well, this reduces the need for social media. So, what would your top 3 tips be in ensuring that a forum is moderated well, that and reduces that need?
Well, I'm going to say something potentially controversial here, but I think that forums that were run by the tutor, so tutor group forums, I know that they were very lowly used, but I think part of the misinformation and the reason people maybe don't engage with bigger forums is because they get a different tutor answering the question. I think that's part of the problem. If they know they're getting the tutor who's going to mark their assignment, I think that helps. I've got no magic issue for the forum. I think part of it is how it looks. It's not interactive. It's not got people's faces. It's not got the same. So I think that's not necessarily an answer for an immediate thing, but I think it's an OU solution that we have to look at, making them a little bit kind of prettier. And I would disagree with, just to pick up on Azuma's point. I don't think it is tutor-free spaces, in that they engaged with me in the Facebook group because they were wanting to get answers. I think I think we need, the third thing is, I think we need more scholarship. I mean, I'm sure there's people here who know more about forums than I do. But that students are using unofficial sources of information, and we need to find out why they're using that, why they're relying on that. Is it because they're anxious about asking in the forum? Is it because they don't have that connection with their tutor anymore? I would be interested to know if whether or not the rise of social media has come about in part when I think we are now acknowledging that the group tuition policy, the break of a link with a tutor, has it now meant that that's fractured in some way and they're now replacing it with this social media? It's partly because people use social media. They're used to using social media. And part of what I would like to do is educate students to not use WhatsApp for certain things. It might be useful for some students, but it seems to be causing anxiety in others. So I'm not sure that's an answer to your question at all.
Really interesting. Thank you.
We've got 2 hands up. I don't know whether this is what you had in mind, Claire.
Go for it. We've got about 2 minutes till. Thank you for having me back. We've got about 2 minutes till tea break, so let's take those 2 hands if you like.
All right.
Yeah.
I think
Thanks, Az.
Nicola and John, and I will now be camera off.
Thank you so much for rescuing me.
No problem.
Okay,
yeah, I found obviously all the the concurrent studies education one really interesting, because as a student that's actually doing concurrent studies in primary education. But on the what's been being discussed about around the forums, I think Sharon has actually hit it, from a student's perspective. I think at the start of a module they are very, especially the tutor group, are very interactive, but then students tend to drift off, and I think it is because it's not as interactive. I think if you've got to do things on the forum as part of your assessed work, then students will engage on that, but generally for asking questions or for support they turn to social media. It's just the way of the world. And the
well,
way
it's
the
quick,
students...
isn't it? I mean, one of the reasons that I struggled to keep up the Facebook group was how quickly students were on there. And one of the problems I had in the second time I did it was students replying before I replied. And I didn't want that. I wanted people to be able to post questions in the Facebook group, but I wanted me to be the main source of response.
Yeah.
But it's so quick, and that's why I think us running Facebook pages is tricky, because the time consumed and having to do it over weekends is not really sustainable for most people. And ALs are quite rightly kind of cautious about taking on that extra workload. But I think forums, yeah, you're right. They do they lose a bit of momentum and then people drop away. So I think there's a tipping point there, isn't there?
And like you say, I think it's the look of them and navigating the forums sometimes, trying to, I mean, obviously we have a lot of forums for association, being the faculty rep, and even myself, I have problems sometimes trying to actually find where these forums are and that they even exist. So, other students probably have the same, not on the modules, because obviously but yeah, I think it's just the interactivity side of it that's lacking.
Well, some of the psychology modules have you have to compulsorily post in the forum, and then they become completely overwhelming because there's so many posts. So I think we need to, I suppose my third point I've just thought of is we need to think carefully about what we're using forums for. What are we teaching them in them? Why are we using them? Are they providing something that you can't provide elsewhere? And do we want to provide a sense of community to students, and is forums the best place to provide the community? So I'd be delighted if people would email me, because if we can get a group of people together who are interested in social media, I think it would be a lot less overwhelming. We could work with Claire to develop a strand that looks specifically at this, which would be fabulous.
I'm gonna
as a student,
I'm just going to jump in there because I'm conscious of time. John, is your point a quick point, or is it something you could go on, go for it, go for
really quick, and hopefully it'll pull something together from earlier and a point here. I think we're talking about lots of issues around social media, and I think sometimes we can conflate technology issues with convenience issues, with confidence issues. And actually, I think the key to that is students as partners, and actually co-creating some kind of research with students as researchers, not as just participants. So that's my really quick point.
That's great. Thanks for tying everything together and almost leading seamlessly into the next session.